It'll be all change at Anfield for Liverpool in the 24-25 season. After a campaign that saw them fighting on all fronts fizzled out, they had to deal with the departure of Jurgen Klopp. The German would add one final trophy before his emotional farewell. Off the field, FSG have had a restructure behind the scenes and appointed forwards Arne Slot into the role of replacing Klopp. It certainly will be interesting to see what impact Slot can have at the club once he transitions from Dutch football. It leaves the question of what life after Klopp looks like. In this video, I'm going to take on the job myself and look to bring the glory days back to Anfield by making shrewd signings and playing attacking football. We take over the club on July the 1st, 2024 and are welcomed to the club by the board. Liverpool are a club with a worldwide reputation, state-of-the-art facilities and a media prediction that matches the 23-24 season. At the start of the save, there is a transfer budget of £92.5 million available to make improvements. Jurgen Klopp has left behind a strong squad, which should only need minor improvements initially. Alisson is one of the best keepers in the world. The back four is solid but at times looked shaky, which is what cost Liverpool so dear in the run-in to the 23-24 season. The midfield was completely rebuilt last season. Thiago is in the lineup here, but he will depart the club at the start of the save. Up top, Liverpool have a potent front line. It should scream goals, but sometimes they fall short. I feel the club need a proper centre forward. Darwin Núñez will operate in my system from the left-hand side. The board have set out their vision, and it includes playing attacking football, developing players in the youth system, and signing younger players for the first team. During the save, I'll be running my own Mega 4-3-3, there is a video on that if you want to check it out, which has a good balance to it and should be aggressive enough despite only being a positive tactic. We inherit a squad with good depth and a mix of experience and youth, which was utilised by Jurgen Klopp. I think overall this could be a brilliant challenge. Let's get to work. To kick the rebuild off, let's look at the transfers from Season 1, and the first player to leave the club would be Rhys Williams. A hero a couple of seasons ago when Liverpool really needed him. I don't think he's a long-term player at the club, and he will move to Birmingham City. The next player to leave is a player who has been at Liverpool a while and seems to possess a lot of potential. But sadly for Sepp Vandenberg, we need players to perform now, so he was allowed to go to Southampton. Up next to leave is another player who has been at the club and was brilliant when called upon in the past. Sadly though, Nat Phillips isn't getting any younger and we have allowed him to go to Leicester. To complete the Season 1 defensive exodus, we allowed Kostas Tsimikas to go to PSG as they were willing to pay £22.5 million for the Greek international. With so many defenders leaving, it is only natural that some needed to arrive. The first of them is Sporting wonderkid Giancarlo Inacio, a player who has been touted to be moving away from Sporting for a while now. He's finally a Liverpool player. Next up, we signed Kyle Walker-Peters, not the glamorous signing that everybody wants, but one who can replace Tsimikas and could double up on the right. He helps with registration for UEFA competitions. The next player to arrive is a player who will allow us to unlock Trent's other qualities as we sign rapid right-sided player Jeremy Frimpong. Another Sporting defender would be the next player to join the club as we brought in Ousmane Diomande. The Ivorian is a machine and should be challenging for a starting role straight away. The final player to arrive in Season 1 is Ollie Watkins, a player who in real life always scores against Liverpool. He can now begin to score the goals for Liverpool in the game. So with the defence sorted and a goal scorer coming in, let's see how we get on. In the Premier League, we would start off the season in imperious form, winning the first 18 games in a row before dropping points against Brentford. In the second half of the season, we would continue to play brilliant football as we only dropped points a further 4 times. In the Carabao Cup, we would have wins in round 3 and 4 against Middlesbrough and Chelsea before we were knocked out in the quarter-finals by Newcastle. Our FA Cup campaign would be very short-lived, as revenge for knocking them out in the Carabao Cup, Middlesbrough would beat our rotated team 1-0 as we exit in round 3. In the Champions League, we would do well in the group stage, ensuring qualification for the knockout round, where we would beat Fenerbahce 6-2 on aggregate before being drawn against Inter in the round of 16. After a draw at home, we would lose away to go out of the competition 3-2 on aggregate. This means that in Season 1, we would win the Premier League, winning 32 of 38 games, scoring 99 points and recording a goal difference of 77. Mo Salah would show why he's Liverpool's main goal threat once again, as the Egyptian scored 24 goals from 35 starts. Ollie Watkins would take a while to dislodge Darwin Núñez and made 15 starts, scoring 8 goals. Jeremy Frimpong suffered a first season injury, which meant that we didn't get to see the best of him, whilst Diomande would force his way to 20 starts and score an impressive 7 average league rating. In terms of the finances for the season, there would be a massive £199 million available to spend in Season 2. Looking at the squad, it seems that after the defensive rebuild of Season 1, the next place to look at is the midfield. As good as the current midfield is, there seems to be room for an out-and-out defensive midfielder. Let's begin Season 2 looking at the transfers, and there would be only one departure. This would be Bobby Clark, with the attacking midfielder being allowed to join Bristol City. For the arrivals, we would start off with an exciting young Italian midfielder as we signed Nicolo Ravella. The 23-year-old can seemingly do it all in the middle of the park and should be a sound investment if he comes good on his potential. Joining him would be Toon Koopmeiners, a player who is said to be admired by a raft of clubs in Europe. We swooped in to add him to our team. With the two midfielders in, that would complete the second season business. Let's see how we got on. The season would start off in the Community Shield as we faced off against Spurs. Watkins, Konate and Jota would fire us to victory as we won 3-0. Our Premier League form wasn't impressive this season as it was last season, but it was good nonetheless. We would drop points 5 times in the first half of the season, and after the turn of the year we would continue in good form as once again we would only drop points a handful of times. Our Carabao Cup wouldn't last long in Season 2 as we'd be knocked out in round 3 by Brentford. The FA Cup resulted in a good cup run that saw us beat Watford, Rotherham, Norwich and Bristol City before we came up against old rivals Manchester United, who beat us 1-0. But it would be the Champions League where we would excel in Season 2. After a shaky start to the first 2 group games, we would go on a good run and qualify for the round of 16 where we would play and beat Chelsea over 2 legs, needing penalties to get the job complete. We then played against Real Madrid and powered to a 4-2 aggregate victory, thanks to a 3-1 win at home. Up next was Man City, where we would draw at home before a win at the Etihad set up a final against PSG. We would prove to be too strong for the Parisians as we dominated the game and win the Champions League for the very first time as manager of the club with a 2-0 victory. This means that in Season 2 we added another Premier League to the tally, picked up the opening Community Shield and added a 7th Champions League for the club. Nicolo Ravella would have a great first season at Liverpool, starting in 50 games and provided 15 assists. Koopmeiners would slot in alongside him in the new look midfield and play 49 times, scoring 11 whilst providing 8 assists himself. Diogo Jota would be the top scorer for the season as he netted 29 times, and Andy Robertson would be the assist king with 20 from 49 starts. With the League and Champions League wins, the money is now starting to pile up. For Season 3, there is a transfer budget of £209 million. In terms of the starting 11, things have settled down. Alisson isn't pictured here due to injury, but the back 4 pretty much now pick themselves. The mid 3 has just fired us to the League and Champions League double, and goals provided by the attackers show that they are all on top of their game. In terms of improving the squad now, it would be difficult. We may have to start signing world stars or guaranteed high potential wonder kids. In Season 3, we would allow Ollie Watkins to move on from the club. The Season 1 signing would move to Leeds after scoring 14 times in 30 games. Following him out the door, would be Wataru Endo. Al Ettifaq would once again step in and sign a defensive midfielder from Liverpool. In terms of arrivals, would start off by signing the highly sought after Brazilian Luis Guilherme. Maybe not a player to start immediately, but he has all the potential to develop into a world-class wide player when we need him. The only other player coming in would be a replacement for Ollie Watkins, and that would be Santiago Jimenez. The Mexican was scoring goals for fun in Holland and scored 63 in 116, so I thought he could be the perfect backup striker when called upon. So with the two new faces added to the squad, let's see how we got on in Season 3. Once again our season started with the Community Shield, and once again we would win the curtain raiser. This time we would go on and beat Chelsea in a crazy game that finished 5-3. After our Champions League win, we also took part in the UEFA Super Cup and would win that against fellow Premier League team Spurs, beating them 3-1. In the Premier League, we would now start to show our authority over the league, as we have had some pretty impressive form. We would go on and win 17 of the first 20 games before things got a little crazy after Christmas. We would drop points quite often and only lost to Manchester United. In the Carabao Cup, we would go on a good cup run. We beat Portsmouth, Colchester, Rotherham and Spurs en route to the final, where sadly we would be taken all the way to extra time by Arsenal and lose 3-2. In the FA Cup, we would also put on a good showing of ourselves. This time we would get past Sunderland, Wolves, Manchester United and Everton for a semi-final against Man City that we would lose 1-0. As defending champions in the Champions League, the pressure was on to perform well. The group stage wasn't brilliant though, 2 draws to start us off, 2 defeats in the middle. We did qualify for the knockout phase and would beat Man United and Real Madrid before a quarter-final where PSG would get revenge and knock us out 4-2 on aggregate. So in Season 3 we would add another Premier League title, the Community Shield and the Super Cup to our collection. Santiago Jimenez would have a solid start to life at Anfield. The Mexican would score 19 goals in his first season. Mo Salah would show no signs of slowing down, the Egyptian bagging 18 goals from 46 starts. Nicolo Ravella was developing into a midfield maestro who looks an absolute bargain. The Italian would play some impressive football in his second season at the club. Finally, new boy Luis Guilherme would be given some first team opportunities and would start to show the reason that we signed him. As we move on to Season 4, we'll now have a transfer budget of £197 million. The first team is still looking very strong. Once again, it's difficult to pinpoint weaknesses, and moving forward, we need to look for star players who will improve the team. Season 4 would begin with 2 departures, the first of which would be Cody Gakpo. With first team football limited for him, he asked to leave, and as soon as former club PSV came knocking, he was always going to go back to Dutch football. The second player to leave would be Fabio Carvalho. Unsure of what his true position actually is, he struggled to have a big impact on the first team, and when Shanghai Port came in, we were happy for him to go to China. With 2 players leaving the club, there were some gaps for players to arrive, and the first arrival would be Barcelona Academy star Pedri. He was up for sale at Barcelona, and the fact he can play so many positions made this one a no-brainer. The other player to arrive is another exciting young prospect in the form of Franco Mastantuono. The young Argentine popped up on a scouting report and was signed instantly. Looking a ready-made first teamer at 19, I am really looking forward to seeing what he can do. So with the transfers complete, how would we get on? Another Community Shield would be the first trophy of the season as we go back to Wembley and beat Manchester City 4-1. In the Premier League, we started off quite shaky as we dropped points early on. We would quickly though find our stride and have a strong run to December and January. In the second half of the season, we'd played really good football and only lost to Aston Villa. On top of that, we would only drop points 5 times in the 2028 part of the season. In the Carabao Cup, we would suffer an early exit at the hands of Brentford again. In the FA Cup, we would beat Coventry, Man United and Sunderland before being knocked out in the quarters by Brighton. The Champions League, though, would result in a crazy campaign. At times in the group stages we played poorly, but somehow managed to qualify for the knockout phase. There we would beat Benfica before beating Bayern Munich in the round of 16. Up next was Juventus, where we lost the away game 3-2 before demolishing them at Anfield 7-1. In the semi-finals we played against Real Madrid and we would win 5-2 over two legs to take us to another Champions League final. This time we would play against Roma, and it would be a final that we would go on and win 2-1 to lift another Champions League trophy. So in Season 4 we would walk to another Premier League title, this time scoring 91 points from 38 games. We would also add the Community Shield and the Champions League to the trophy cabinet once again. Mo Salah had an insane season at the age of 35. The Egyptian would go and score 27 goals from 53 starts. Nicolo Ravella continues to develop into an elite midfielder, with the Italian getting better and better season on season. Pedri had a busy first season at the club, starting in 40 games, whilst Mastan Tuono would break in slowly, impressing when getting the chance to make 11 starts. For the final season there will be a transfer kitty of £67 million available to us. The best 11 now features a change at centre-back, as it seems that Virgil van Dijk is now taking a back step to some of the younger defenders. The midfield now features Pedri alongside Ravella and Koopmeiners, and Guilherme looks likely to force himself into that wide left slot ahead of Luis Diaz. Season 5 would begin with the news that Virgil van Dijk would retire from football in July of 2028. He leaves the club as a legend. In terms of transfers, we would allow Joe Gomez to join Newcastle, and Andy Robertson leaves to go and get a payday in the Middle East from Al Ittihad. Joining the club for the final season will be Dusan Vlahovic, with the powerhouse striker joining the club from Juventus, and Archie Gray would join from Leeds United. So for the final time, let's look at the season results. In the Community Shield, we would once again be at Wembley, this time needing penalties to beat Chelsea. In the Super Cup, we would face off against Red Bull Leipzig and defeat them 3-1 in extra time. Once again, we would have a brilliant Premier League campaign, as we only dropped points 5 times in the first half of the season, before a near perfect second half only saw us draw 3 games and not lose since December. The Carabao Cup would be a disappointment, as we exit in the quarter-finals to Manchester United. The FA Cup would be much better though, as we had wins against Peterborough, Luton, Burnley, Norwich and Everton to set up a cup final against Arsenal, where we would triumph on penalties after a 0-0 draw. Our final Champions League campaign was going well during the group stage, with us qualifying direct for the round of 16, where we would then face off against Spurs and beat them 4-2 on aggregate, and that set up a quarter-final against PSG, and we would beat them 4-3 over 2 legs. Sadly for us, that set up a semi-final against Barcelona, who would knock us out over the 2 legs. This means that in the final season we would win the Premier League with a points total of 96, add the FA Cup, Community Shield and the Super Cup to our trophy haul. We leave the club with brilliant finances. The new manager will have up to £136 million to spend if he wishes. This is now how the final starting 11 will look once we leave the club. We have made massive improvements to both the defence and the midfield. Mo Salah is still growing strong at the club, and he is a legend and he holds on to his right wing slot. Nunez is slotting into the left wing, where I felt personally he's probably most dangerous, and we now have a goal machine up top in Dusan Vlahovic. Speaking of Vlahovic, he had a brilliant first season at the club. The striker would go on to score 33 in all competitions. Mo Salah, as mentioned, even at the age of 36, would still score 18 in 33 starts. Trent is now the club captain and has been a great ambassador across the save. Koopmeiners is easily one of the best buys in the save. The Dutchman has gone from strength to strength in the midfield. Inacio and Diomande had to wait for their turn to become first team regulars, but they both did really well to wait it out, and when Van Dijk declined, they stepped in to be brilliant replacements. Nicolo Ravella, though, has been a revelation alongside Koopmeiners in our new look midfield. So after looking at some of the players, the season isn't actually over, as we have now qualified to play in the Club World Cup. We started off by beating Al Ahly 7-2 in the group game, then we drew River Plate and beat them 3-0. We played Inter and won 2-1 before a semi-final against Champions League foes PSG saw us win 4-1 to set up a final against Barcelona. We would draw on all of our reserves to win the final 2-1 and become crowned Club World Champions. So with our time ending on a high, let's have a look at what we have achieved. We would be champions of England every season we were at the club. We would add 2 more Champions League titles to the club's roll of honours. We would add 4 Community Shields, 3 UEFA Super Cups, and that final title of becoming Club World Champions. This rebuild has been special for me. This is my club. As a fan of the club, you always want to believe anything is possible. It is time to be realistic though in real life, and with Klopp leaving and Slot arriving, nothing is guaranteed. The owners are known for not spending to win and probably won't change now. This could be a tough period of transition for the club and is one that I will watch eagerly. One thing is for sure though, at Liverpool, you never walk alone.